back in the raspberry patch. Last time we were here, the plants were maybe only a month or so old, just beginning to grow. Now they're at kind of an intermediate stage. It's a stage that we call trellising. It's where the plants start to get long enough to where they lay over on the ground and start to bunch up. So we take them and we tie them up to these wires and make them grow up. And that way we're able to keep them thinned out so they don't get too thick. We're able to give them plenty of airflow, which cuts down on funguses, diseases, and helps control bugs. But we're up here just about every day picking berries early in the morning. That's the best time to pick. And we're starting to get some pretty nice berries. They will get better as the season comes along and the plants get more fully developed, but they're still tasty. Very good raspberries. We have these early varieties are starting to develop, and so are these varieties over here on the other side of the field. We have 3 different varieties to try and extend the season: the early, mid-season, and late varieties. And there are differences in the types of plants, but not so much in the berries that they produce. Most all of them produce a real nice tasting and very appealing looking raspberry. As these plants grow, they'll get, some of them 6 feet, 7 feet long. And the berries, as they're trained, the berries come right at the end of the cane, which also is nice if you trellis because it makes picking very easy. We'll go down through here and I'll show you some plants that are a little more developed and you'll see what I'm talking about. We make these little wire clips that just goes around the cane and then attaches to the wire here like this. Like this. And that keeps the plant in position, keeps the wind from blowing it around, and it keeps the berries, of course, up off the ground like you want. And it also aids in the amount of berries that the birds get. The birds naturally love these berries, and we love the birds. But when the plants are laying out over this wire and a bird tries to land on the plant, it has no support. So the only berries they actually are able to feed on are the ones that are close to the ground. So once the plants get grown a little bit, we don't lose too many berries to the bird. Once these raspberries start to fruit like this, you have to be very diligent with your picking, at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. But we try to pick early in the mornings. That's when the berries are, I think, they're best tasting, and they seem to last longer. They have a longer shelf life if picked early in the morning. And I think you will too. You'll notice a difference in the berries. These rows here are an early variety, these 4 rows here. And the reason I want to show you those is because they're a little bit farther along in their development, and I can possibly explain a little bit better what's going to happen with the rest of this field eventually. As I was saying before, these plants will come up and they'll start to get long. And so we tie them off to these trellises and just kind of train them. You can take them and move them around and just give them support like this, and they'll continue to grow. And then when you see the flowers start to come, that's when you know that the plant's just about ready to fruit. And because you have keikis that come up constantly up and down through here, this row throughout the season will have these ones that come up, they'll fruit, we'll take those off, and we'll train others to come up. So in another month or so, this whole row will basically look like this. And then your maintenance is just pruning, giving airflow, taking your excess plants out, and trellising, so that when the berries form on the plants, they're easy to pick. That's all there is to growing raspberries in Hawaii. The rest is done by where we live. And I don't know, just my opinion, but you may not find a better tasting raspberry than what grows in Hawaii. I know the Northwest Coast is well known for their berries, but we're going to give them a run for their money. Which leads me to the next berry that I'd like to introduce you to. And it's our main commercial crop. It's called the Poha berry. And I didn't know much about Poha berries until I moved here. But it's just one of the most incredible, versatile berries I think I've ever run across. And I can't wait to show it to you. Let's go. Welcome to the Poha fields. And probably the reason for the moonshot is we're beginning to plant our summer crop. And we plant according to the moon and the lunar calendar. So it's the perfect time to begin to think about planting. And I want to show you and introduce you to this Hawaiian Poha plant. Come on. I think I'll give you a little bit of an overview, maybe a start to finish with these Poha berries. There seems to have been a lot of interest in this berry by local people as well as others. And so I want to try and cover this as well as I can with the amount of time that I have. Basically, the way I grow pohas is like we used to grow field tomatoes back in Tennessee. And you can see here we just use long rows, and I'll show you how we prepare the soil. In preparing a field for planting, what we do is we plow the whole section, then we come back and we cultivate and loosen the soil down to a depth of about 2 feet. Once the soil is all loosened and conditioned, then we add our composted materials, microorganisms, fish amino acids, and we make different fermented plant juices that we collect from plants around the farm that are beneficial. They grow healthy and are bug resistant, disease resistant. And we mix all that together with our compost and we put that down in the rows. Then we come back and we cover those rows with this weed mat, which prevents, or shouldn't say prevents, but it certainly helps with our maintenance and keeping the weeds out of the plant. Once we let these rows set for about a week, at which time the moon's going to be just perfect, and then we come back and we space our plants and plant them. The plants, we start from seeds and we grow them up to a certain size, usually about 6 to 8 inches. before we plant. And you only want to plant one in each location, because these plants, as you can see, will grow to be 4 or 5 feet tall, some of them 10 to 12 feet wide. It's going to make a nice Poha field once we're working our way up the side of this hill right now. So probably by this winter we'll have the rest of the 20 acres planted, and after that it's just a matter of maintenance and picking. Let me show you some of the plants that are developed and they're fruiting. We did pick this field yesterday, so I'm not expecting to find a lot of berries that I could show you one that's perfectly ripe. But what I will show you is the different stages that the plants and the berries will go through on their way to maturity. And what you'll see here are plants that are producing berries. You'll notice that there's a lot of berries like this. This is an immature berry. Even though there's a berry inside there, it's still forming. Eventually, it will turn to this color. And when it turns to that color, then you know it's ripe. We've already picked this one, sorry. But it's kind of it's a timing thing. Here we pick sometimes twice a week. Early in the season we'll pick once a week, and it gives these berries time to ripen. They're not like a raspberry or a strawberry where they'll go from a semi-ripe stage to a pickable stage in 24 hours. These berries are very special. They will begin to ripen, continue to ripen until they reach their maturity stage, at which point they'll actually drop from the plant. And those berries have the ability to lay there on the ground inside this husk for sometimes 3 months without going bad. The husk protects the berry, and as long as it's not removed from its husk, it seems to stay in a holding stage. Kind of dependent on the weather, and we don't leave them out here. We collect them and take them in, which I'll show you later. But they're not as sensitive a plant as, say, the raspberries or the blueberries, in that they don't require daily picking and maintenance. It makes it easier to grow large quantities of berries, which is something that's necessary for Hawaii. And as you look down through these rows, you'll see plants, some tall, very bushy, some a little bit shorter, look like they're quite a bit smaller. And we do that for a reason. And it's done by pruning, and it's done by selective planting. If we planted all these fields at the same time and they fruited all at the same time, there's no way we could keep up with it. So we do revolving plantings. We plant at different times of the year so that the plants are in different stages of growth throughout the fields. And that helps us to keep up with the production, and it also ensures that we're going to have berries year-round this way. Here's a good example of a plant that is in different stages of its fruiting cycle. You can see the bees are working, they're pollinating flowers, new flowers that's coming out that's going to form fruit. It has berries on here that are developing, nice and green berries. And then it also has berries that we've been picking. You can tell on some of these where they've already fruited. A lot of times the wind, feral pigs, birds or whatever, will land on these branches, and they're quite brittle. They look like a large tomato plant, and they grow very similar to a tomato plant, but the arms are very brittle, and they get long, and they break easily. So you have to take special care when you're picking, and I have even trellised these berries before, and it is beneficial. The berry plant will grow. I had a couple that were almost 7 feet tall, but then you end up picking berries like this. So we've kind of developed this system over the last 4 or 5 years, and it really seems to work good. The plants grow naturally. We do selective pruning on them, and it promotes new growth. We grow them a little bit taller. By September, October, these plants will be about this tall. The fruit that's on here now will have already developed and been picked. We'll come back and we'll prune the ends of these branches, shape the plant back to where it's contained to about a 3 or 4 foot area. And at that point, after that pruning, the plant will grow up. Once it starts to grow up, it'll start to put out more flowers, and it'll fruit again. After that cycle is when we begin to take the plants out and replace them with new plants. But the pruning process that I was telling you about used to be used mostly just for compost, but we've had a new development that I'd like to kind of give you a little bit of information on. I can't say too awful much yet, but when we're not out picking berries, Ray is around here somewhere. I'd like to introduce you to Ray. Ray is in charge of the picking crews, and on days that we're not picking, he goes around and he harvests these branches that get broken and the branches that we prune from the plants. We collect those and save those, because in the research that I did a couple years ago about these Poha berries, I discovered some medical publications that were done in Taiwan. A group of scientists were studying folk medicines and traditional herb medicines to see if the claims that had been made were valid or not. And the study that I found that was related to the Poha berries used an extracted oil from these plants, which contain many beneficial compounds actually, but the one that they used to study lung cancer is a withanolide. And they found that this particular compound actually killed lung cancer cells. I had to read that a couple times. And then I printed it off and I took it to the University of Hawaii School of Pharmacology to make sure I was actually seeing what I was seeing, and it's true. The publications were published about 3 years ago now, so it's relatively new information, but the School of Pharmacology here in Hawaii has started studying many of the local plants to determine their medicinal values and just determine exactly what properties they are. And the Poha berry is one that is loaded with all kinds of good stuff. So nothing goes to waste anymore. We've become a zero waste farm. Everything that we harvest in the way of berries is used, and now even the plants, after their growth cycle, and we pull the plants and replace them. Those plants we use and extract the oil from. And soon the University of Hawaii will publish their findings. They say within 2 years they will complete their studies. They've been using our plants to study all different kinds of cancer, Alzheimer's disease, just many different things, and it's a very exciting time. I can't tell you all of this stuff yet because it hasn't been published yet, but there are things happening with plants that grow in Hawaii that's going to benefit the world.